Peace. Today we're going to be talking about Ragnarok and its significance to the times that we're in right now. Like how they spiritually and physically connect to things that we're actually going through in real time. Like we can already see how culture, art, movies, TV shows, music, video games, all these different things resonate with people to a certain level. Like that's why you get a show that can be, not even that well known and end up being like a cult classic, being things that resonate with people across generations, cultures, ethnicities, races, religions. And when you look at it like that, that's like really telling. You can look at it from the Jungian perspective, or Jungian perspective rather, and look at it like psychoanalyzing it. Like, what does it say when this motif or this mythology is being propped up right now, or different time periods? What does it say when people resonate with these things to this certain extent? Or what is it even saying about the people that create them? I don't think it's really like to anybody's stretch of imagination that art and culture represent things from the collective unconscious. Like you gotta think about even the act of creating these things is a huge collective endeavor, collective effort. And they're all from completely different, like cinematography and script writing and the actors, like they're all attacking it from a completely different angle, but they're all cohesively telling one story, telling one mythology. And when you talk about people who play out a mythology, like if people dressed up as some of the gods that you can see around these rooms, like Basset and Tehudi, Mayat, like if they dressed up these guys and they played out their story physically, like dressed up at them and you played out the story and they really believed they were doing it, and everybody who endeavored into it came with the, the suspension of disbelief. They say that when you watch movies, like you get where you kind of, suspend the reality. They're like, oh, all this shit, like it don't gotta be real to feel real. And when you talk about people doing that, that's called ritual. Like there's already a word for that. So when people do these movies and these TV shows, they're really just doing rituals. And that's not like a bad thing that people really like look at ritual as like a bad word or like a spooky, ooey word. But ritual is really just something you do repeatedly, symbolically, and for specific reason. Like, last night was my little brother's birthday, and we all sung happy birthday for him. That's a ritual. Like the idea of having a birthday party, the idea of having a cake and a candle, and we all sing this song together. Like that's just a ritual that we all like just do, like kind of naturally. Like the aspect of when we go to a funeral, like and when you go to a funeral, usually unless there's a special request, everybody's gonna wear black because that's the the ritual of our culture. In different cultures, it's absurd to wear black at a funeral. You wear white. You wear white because it's a symbol of like spiritual purity and the other side and ascension. So when you look at it like that, it's not that the colors are really the big deal. Like even for my grandfather's funeral, his favorite color was royal blue. So everybody wore blue, or royal blue, more specifically. So you think about it, it's not. And that's the funny thing, that it doesn't matter about the color. That's my whole point. The idea is the ritual is that we all do it together. We're all doing this one thing. And not even necessarily we're all doing this one thing, is that we're all buying into this whole cohesive idea. We're all gonna play out this story together. And these things are very like innately linked to the inner world of all humans. Like this is like I said, these are a view into the collective unconscious. And when we think about that, that's why we're talking about this today, because recently there's been hella video games, hella TV shows, hella movies about Ragnarok. And that is really interesting. Even more recently, one came out by Zack Snyder called Twilight of the Gods, which is one of the translations of Ragnarok. Of other ones, it's like the final destiny of the gods, the 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 death of the gods, the end of the era, the end of the age of the gods, like always around that whole thing. And even the whole aspect of the twilight of the gods is the aspect of the darkening of the gods, the final destiny, their final fate is to, die out. And that's the age we're in right now. We're in the age of those, because you gotta think about gods, and even when they talk about in like Kemetic and Egyptian mythology, the gods were the Neteru, which were the principalities, the principles. They represented certain ideals and concepts, abstract and physical. Like the idea is that we talked about earlier, the sand gods and the snow gods. The idea is that not only does representing something as a snow god help represent their power, because if you live in a place that's dominated by snow, you have a really powerful god if you have a snow god. It also, like, remember that, man birthed gods. Like, we gave birth to them. Like, we made these things to deal with these abstract energies, because it's all energy work down here. It's all magic. That's all life is, really. So when you look at it like that, it's all alchemy. When you look at it like that, in the same way in alchemy, they made gold, lead, tin, and they made them be represented, Mercury, and they made them in Quicksilver, rather. They made them represented by these different deities, like Mercury and Jupiter, and or different symbols like the sun and the moon for gold and silver. And we look at it like that, the same way that they made these abstract symbols and these names into something, or they made these abstract concepts into symbols and names and gave them a mythology, gave them a story, gave them something to hold on to in their mind. They made them real for them. They gave it a consciousness that they can interplay with. The same way that you have an imaginary best friend, people give them a name, and now they have somebody to actually talk to. Like, realistically, they could have just talked to that thing, whatever. They just did it anyway. But the same way, like fucking Castaway, Tom Hanks movie with the fucking soccer ball, Wilson, where you talk to Wilson, where like realistically, you could just talk to the soccer ball. Like, why do you get the nigga face and a name? Because it's saying something about how our inner psychology really works. Like, that's just how we work. Like, that's an aspect of our consciousness, clearly, where we can personify things and now we can interplay with them. That's clearly just an aspect of this world. That's what Santa Claus is, like egregors, poltergeists, all these different things. But I'm getting on a tangent. The concept is that in the same way they did that in mythology, where in order to have a conscious relationship and really to have dominion over, to have power over these different abstract and physical concepts like snow or love, they would give it a mythology, give it a name, give it characteristics, colors, favorite foods like the orishas, favorite incense, like numbers, like a whole system, whatever, right? Give this whole system to it, and now they personify this energy. Now they have like what's the word? Like, they just made it into something you can grab, something tangible, essentially, even just like mentally tangible. And upon doing that, that is representing having dominion over these forces. But the forces that we created, or the gods that we created, are really just things that have dominion over these different forces, over these different, they're just really personification of these different abstract concepts, these different energies, these archetypical energies. So in that, saying all that, it is to say that when you're talking about moving from one age into another, and specifically the age we're moving out of is the age of Pisces, the age of belief, the age of dogmatic belief, the age of tradition. We're going to move kind of forwards and backwards in a way, kind of like to the old age, the original old age. Like, all this shit is relative. There's no old, there's no future, but that's not the point. It's like it's all just cycles and infinity. You know what I'm saying? So the idea is that now we're moving back into the golden age, like the pyramid building shit. And the idea is that with that, moving from an age of the Kali Yuga into the Sutta Yuga, moving from an age of spiritual rigidity, physicality, war, into an age of more spiritual growth, expansion of consciousness, Christ consciousness, that whole thing. As we make that switch, the ideals of that time, the principalities of that time, have to die. The gods have to die. God is dead. God remains dead, and we've killed them. Friedrich Nietzsche. How are you gonna say your name? But the whole thing is that that in that, like, that's a real thing. Like, it has to be the twilight of the gods. Like, the party must die, and that's the whole point of this video, because we're linking this to real time. Like the same way back in the day they had poetry to represent their mythology. Today we have poetry to represent our mythology. It's just called rap. It's called hip hop. It's just called like nigga shit. Like, look at the way that rap has taken over the fucking world. Like, there was a time when rappers were considered like public enemy. Like, that's why they had that name. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they were like public enemy #1. Like, the idea of being a rapper, the idea of rap clearly was too radical. That like they were like, nah, these niggas can't exist. And you know, in retrospect, there was like kind of co-opt movement kind of from the start, like CIA, FBI, like everybody was there from the start. And you know, Brother Panic has a great video about that, about the, you know, the hip hop like mind control programming. Like, that shit's insane. You really look back and sit on it. Like, think about it, like, he even broke it down. Like, he was in New York. They take the fucking instruments out of the schools, the public school system in New York. So they take the instruments out and niggas start beating on the desk and start like rapping and shit. And you know what I mean? Like, of course, you know, there's a whole DJ aspect, and that's where it came from. Disc jockeys and what's it called? The MC, the nigga that just spoke over the beats, and then eventually started rhyming. Like, I get the whole concept. You know, Joe Sky Heron, whatever, Dolomite. But the whole point is that today, it's everywhere. Like, it's on commercials, it's in Japan, it's all across the world. And while that's something, that's really like still kind of independent of the very real thing that is real rap. Like, real rap is like very, like, it's the oral tradition, like in full form. Like, you think about it, even back in the day, like these jesters and these, you know, niggas used to sing in courts and in front of the kings and the queens. And you think about it, it was all rhyming. Like, they was telling stories about what's going on. It was being kind of funny, it was being creative and witty, but they was all just rhyming and rapping, essentially. And rapping is just that times 1,000. And there's even traditional rap cultures and like Islam, like Arabic cultures. I can't remember the name of it, but it's like tradition they have already of just rhyming, and then they kind of just melded it with rap in the new age. And the thing is, when you think about, like, we are the gods. Like, the people you see around you, like, these are gods. Like, you know, we all are God, and we all can be gods. And more specifically, some of us are even older than gods. We're the Titans and old ones, that whole concept. But that's like, don't get worried about that. The whole concept is that in that, the story of our life is mythology. Because mythology is not about, like, you know, just these abstract concepts. They're about these concepts that resonate within us, these archetypical energies that live within us and within the universe, because we're just a reflection of the same thing. So, you know, as within, so without, you know, as above, so below. So that whole interesting concept is that, which brings it back to the point of Norse mythology, Ragnarök. Like, there was like I said, video game came out very popular, God of War, 2 of them actually, where they do both. They do like before Ragnarok coming, and then they do the actual Ragnarok storyline, which is very interesting. And like, people might not like that idea of like the old gods having to die, the old principles. Like think about now, like think about all the principles of life that just have died out. Like fucking 9 to 5 jobs don't mean what they used to be. Like the president doesn't mean what it used to mean. The highest ordeals of this land, of our culture, of this system we're in, of the matrix, have now just been flipped on their head. Like niggas just don't look at it as like the way they used to. They don't look at authority the same, like because those ordeals of that age are just dead. And specifically, the one that we're talking about is this demiurge energy, this father, sky, God that is pervasive through that whole area, like that Jupiter, that Baal, that Baal, the lightning niggas, the Thor, the Odins, like all that father, sky, God shit. Like that shit is dead. Like Zeus, that shit is dead, bro. Like I'm gonna make another video about that show Chaos that really talks about how that whole age is gone. And all right, let's speed up. So what we'll get to real quick is the idea of comparative mythology, which is really what we're always doing, because like this is something I kind of just did naturally, but it's already something that exists. Like the idea of comparative mythology, most famously would be talked about with Joseph Campbell and the hero mythos, where they have the journey of the hero that's pervasive throughout all cultures, throughout all different mythologies, religions. Like it's literally the journey of Heru. It's the journey of the rising sun that has to redeem the father, defeat the evil uncle, essentially, usually, and his evil twin, evil brother, like whatever, has to defeat this energy and redeem his father, redeem his spiritual, subconscious, inner energy, and bring it to the light. He has to restore, Heru has to restore the eye of Osiris, restore his energy, and his Ka, his Ba. In that, we see that everywhere. Like that's in fucking Lion King. Like that's literally the same story. Like it's the rising sun has to avenge the dead father, defeat the evil uncle, restore order to the realm that is now chaos. That's literally Lion King. That's fucking Harry Potter. That's Jesus Christ. That's King Arthur. That's everybody. And that's the whole point. Comparative mythology is the idea of looking at these different, like there's a lot of different there's a lot of different ways to look at comparative mythology. Like of course there is the idea of like physically and anthropologically, where looking at a myth and seeing how they compare to different myths throughout different regions can literally show you how people have shared origins, or how people have moved and traveled throughout different places, and how these link their cultures. And what I've kind of found is that comparative mythology kind of puts like a web over the whole world, where like everybody's story is kind of everybody. Like there's like smaller little sects and families, like the idea of like religion today. Like there's the Abrahamic religions. There's Christianity first, and then like think about Christianity, all different sects of Christianity, all different sects of Islam, all different sects of Judaism, and then you put all those together, and then you have the Abrahamic religions, and then on top of that, you could say you have it's like East African religions essentially, and just the Eastern religions. So you can go on and on and on, and what it comes down to, it seems like everybody kind of everybody. And that's my whole point. When we talk about comparative mythology, we talk about these essentially archetypes and motifs that come out throughout history over and over again, like the idea of the golden apple, or the golden fig, or the golden peach. That's an idea. That's a motif that gets repeated throughout a bunch of different cultures. The idea of I can think about the example of those is, the Eden's golden apples from Norse mythology, which gives life to the gods. There's the golden apple, apple of discord, apple in the Garden of Eve, which some say is a quince. That's also one of them golden quinces. The golden peaches to give immortality in Chinese mythology, Like, there's a bunch of them. But the point is that when you look at comparative mythology, you can see how basically this is like for niggas, basically. Like I'm being essentially, like I'm trying to talk around it. Where essentially this is for people who have a hard time identifying with deities that have historically been depicted as culturally white, which is like just like a weird thing. Just the whole concept of that. Like the whole concept of that, that's something that existed maybe at most like 400 years ago. Like this is a very new idea. The idea of even race and white people is such a new idea that to give mythologies that are thousands and thousands of years old that label, and to now label that as like not ours, like we don't touch that, we stick to Egypt, is insane. Because when you look at the mythologies, if you, that's what I'm saying, like this is how you know niggas don't read or watch movies even. Like, you know what I mean? Just don't learn mythology or don't live it and find it out within themselves. Because like if you actually read Norse mythology, it's like, oh, this is the same thing. Like this is just Osiris. Like essentially I even have it here. Like, and that's what I'm gonna get into for a second. Is Odin is literally like Osiris, Amun-Ra, same type of energy, like the whole, you know, also kind of Heru, but you know, the whole losing the eye thing and gaining wisdom, that's a shared motif. The idea of being this like everyman thing, where like Osiris, the energy of like he was everything. He was a fertility god, he was the old king, now he's the god of the dead, the god of the underworld. But he's still really that old king because he got restored there. Like he's all these things. And that's really what Osiris is. Like he is not Osiris, that's what Odin is the same way. He's the warrior, the wanderer, the wise man, all these things. And talk about Thor, and then Thor is like Thor is like one that's like crazy. Like niggas gonna be so Shungo crazy. Like if you fucking like the Shungo craziness is crazy, then niggas don't see the Thor shit right there. Like the whole lightning and fire and hammer, the dual wielded axe, the belt. Like there's a whole lot of fucking parallels between them two niggas, and that's like insane. So that'd be like niggas like, come on, bro. Like you just leaving your mythology on the table essentially. Because, bro, I don't know if anybody else realizes, but it's a lot of fucking land between where the Norse people were, like Norway and Sweden and shit, and we're fucking East, like West Africa, like Europe, places and shit like that. Like, that's a lot of fucking land. So either those people are the same people, and it took however long for them to all connect and shit like that, or this story is something that you really can't afford to leave on the table because of the fact that it's something that clearly resonates within people, like within you niggas. So niggas is on this shit, no matter if they are niggas that you now call white niggas, or niggas that you now call black niggas, or African niggas, essentially. They just still niggas. So yeah, Thor is also definitely like Ra. That's, you know, the sun god. I would say Ra is more balder. That would make more sense. He's more balder. Heru, more balder. But Thor is also more, you know, he's Horus, but he's Horus like the woman. Horus the warrior. Horus the child. I would say Horus the elder, and is Odin. Oh, and I forgot this. Like obviously Odin is Tehuti. Obviously Odin is Thoth. Like that's not something that you can just brush over. Like that's already a link in like that's not something I'm saying either. That's like something that is something accepted in general comparative mythology, like academia. Like they all say that that's like obvious link. Like the Hermes, Trismegistus, Mercury is Odin. Like that's a one big as it's one big circle. This was it Odin. Well, I guess it starts with, you know, Osiris, then Odin, Mercury, Hermes, and that's kind of how that goes in a sense. Loki is obviously Set. You know, Loki is all about chaos. He's a trickster. He's shape-shifting. That's obviously a Set energy. Tyr, actually, very interestingly, I would say he's linked to like like Horus of the Horizon, Horus the Red, like that warrior type energy. But that's a kind of enough on that one. What we're gonna get into specifically is how, like we talked about, like Norse mythology is all poems, and rap is essentially just all poetry. And recently in rap, they had a big ass rap battle. Like everybody saw that, everybody heard about that. And really, essentially, what that really was is it's just like what's happening. What's happening is like people are, for lack of a better word, waking up. Like people are becoming conscious and aware. And as people become conscious and aware on a global scale, because we're coming to this age of the water bearer, we're in the age of information, the age of expansion of consciousness. And as we're in this age, you now see that people are just seeing shit. Like with the idea of Israel and Palestine. Like I remember even me and my father being annoyed a little bit, admittedly, at first when people was getting really upset and up in arms about the whole ordeal, because it was like, bro, this is not new. Like this is super not new. Like the whole idea, like I'm saying, the whole idea of Zionism is fucking like at least 100 years old now. Like, you know what I mean? And at least, depending on who you ask, like World War I, World War II type shit. Like, come on, that's like, come on. Like, the idea of Israel has been crazy. Like the niggas just like facilitated it. Like they just colonized them. Like they just facilitated the colony for them. Like the fucking whole Western world was just like, hey, here you go. And like the whole bartering system of like the Holocaust and shit. Like that shit was crazy. Like that shit was actually insane when you look back on it. But like the idea of being upset about it in 2024 is also insane. Like, what the fuck? Where were you at? Like, you know what I mean? I know my name's Israel, so maybe I had like not much of an excuse to like, you know, of course maybe I was like paying more attention to what was going on with Israel. But at the same time, it's like, come on, bro. Like, why are you upset about this now? Like, this has been an issue even since I've been alive. It's been a crazy issue. Like, them niggas have been really like getting to it in the last like 20 years. Like, they've been killing them niggas. Like, that shit's crazy. When you talk about, and then people in America being upset about it, they like work for the government and like go to pay their taxes and vote and shit. And it's like, you're living in America, like the place that's funding this genocide. Like we did that. We made them. Like we helped them get started. Like duh. Like we know this is crazy. Like you're like every time you pay for a fucking honey bun, nigga, like you're like that 6 cents and shit go to that 6 cents on that dollar literally goes to fucking killing children in Palestine. Like that's like a reality the niggas really need to sit with that they should have already sat with for real. You know, because like we're all hypocrites if we don't. Like you gotta just be aware of the reality you live in. Like I'm aware of the fact that like the phone I'm recording and going to post this all shit on is literally a product of genocide, a product of slavery, modern day slavery in the Congo and 1,000 different other places that they don't fucking talk about. You gotta be aware. But that's the whole point. Niggas wasn't. And that's why we give, you know, grace now and understanding that like, oh, people just, that was a whole duh. Like we knew that. We were the conscious ones and now that's spreading, clearly. Like that's why we're a movement now, we're woke. That shit's crazy. But in that, saying all that, after that little rant, is to say that there was a lot of that. There was a lot of people like, wait a minute, that actually is fucking crazy. Like, why are they doing that? Like, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. They shouldn't be allowed to colonize a place. And in that same token was the Drake and Kendrick thing where people, like Kendrick literally just essentially called him out for like, bro, you're doing a thing that's like really bad. And like people really haven't cared for the last 20 years because you just make good music and popular music. And I like Drake, don't get me wrong, but I think I've always been aware to the fact that Drake is fucking like a Jewish white Canadian man that's like essentially cosplaying and acting out ritualistically as a black American man because he has the genetics to do it, essentially, and just enough. And he's a good actor, and he has a good ear for music. You know, he has a good genetics for it, like and shit like that. Like it all worked out perfectly to make him this avatar for like white dominance, essentially. It's like weird. It's so crazy to think about that. That's really like actually like the culmination of what that all kind of ended up being. But just the idea, like just calling him out for it, like, hey bro, you do accents. Like what is up with that? Like why do you do fake accents? Like why you always like screwing these artists out? Why are you kind of sexually weird? You're like, it's nothing, it's just the aspect of just consciousness and awareness. And it's not like it didn't backfire a little bit on Kendrick. It's just Kendrick was on the side of like always being more aware, always being more conscious. Like he's the conscious rapper, right? And it's the idea of just like, even on Kendrick kind of backfired on him where it was like, hey bro, like it is kind of weird that like you're supposed to be like a revolutionary artist and fight the power and all that shit. And you're like, you won a Pulitzer Prize and like you stay winning Grammys, man. Like that is kind of like hypocritical. That is a little weird. Like why do they like you? They shouldn't like you. Like why are they rewarding you? They shouldn't reward you. You shouldn't keep coming. But you know, I'm not saying what niggas should do, but like, as a nigga who's like talking about like actually fighting the system and being clearly aware of Christ conscience and the battle that's really going on, like it's kind of weird he played both sides. Like even the idea of playing the Super Bowl is kind of crazy if you think about it. Even the announcements in front of the American flag, who knows? You know what I mean? He's an artist. Artists have the idea that they do that. You know what I mean? But saying all that to say that his most recent song, "Watch the Party Die," like that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about the age of the twilight of the gods. Like you must watch that party die. Cause that's really essentially what niggas was doing in Kali Yuga. Like they was partying, bro. Like it was, you know, war shit, like white people shit, bro. Like rape, fucking pillaging, destroying. You know, trigger warning on that R word. You know what I mean? Which is usually supposed to go before. You know, you say that, but my bad. Saying all that to say that this Ragnarok thing is like really crazy. Like, it's really hitting the fan. You can see how like rappers. You gotta think that rappers are, especially back in the day, they were like gods to people. Like people didn't have as much access to rappers. People didn't have as much. Like you couldn't just go on your phone and just like see exactly what they're doing and go meet up with them at the one day meetups or some shit. Like they weren't on people's stream 24/7. Like rappers were like untouchable. They were like over there. They were like, this when celebrity was still So in that age, like even the idea of celebrity is dying because that was a principle of the old age. It's all dying. It's all falling out. America, Israel, that whole age of that shit that people's doing in the dark, all that shit is dying out. Like it's dying out for people to not be aware to it. It's dying out the idea of like even be able to do that. And that's really what Trump is in a lot of ways, as he's really an avatar for, and Kamala too. They're both really just avatars essentially of many things, but specifically in this context of that last push of white supremacy on both sides. Like the idea of the white supremacy Republican, where like they're gonna be racist to your face, they wanna shoot guns and get to it type shit, Civil War. And the idea of the other side of the white supremacists is like, no, we can do it this way now. We can covertly just change. Cause like that idea, like I remember I told you earlier, the idea of Zeus, the idea of Jupiter, the idea of this white man in the castle on Capitol Hill, the idea of this nigga on Mount Olympus, the idea of the president, the God is dead and remains dead. We have killed them. That shit is dead. Like we are killing that. It doesn't work anymore. It clearly does not work anymore. Like you just can't keep hanging us. You can't keep doing this shit. You can't keep Jim Crowing in different forms. Like all this shit is wild. And the party must die. Like, and that's something that people really don't want to hear. People don't want to hear that the age is coming to an end. And that's because people are scared. Realistically, because what we're talking about is the end of is the release from samsara, which is coming in the idea of the Kali Yuga to the Satya Yuga, where you can be released from this cycle, this wheel, this bullshit. Like this bullshit of just like just the way life has been going. And what I think is important, this is going to be clearly just a longer video, so I'm going to trap in a little bit. But what I want to get into specifically right now is some of the mythology in Ragnarok, so you can actually get some of the story before I give some recommendations on where to get your mythology from when it comes to Norse mythology. Like, basically, I'm getting to Ragnarok. All right, so Ragnarok is literally signaled by the death of Balder. It's a good thing to talk about. The death of Balder is, like I said, Balder is this, he's the sun god. He's essentially the Norwegian Jesus Christ. He's the sun god. He's invincible. He's immortal. Like his mother literally goes around when he's born, because there's a prophecy that their magical sun baby that everybody just love is going to be killed one day. She literally goes around to every living thing, high and low, in all of creation, and she asks us, all the forces, to do him no harm. And they all agree because they just love the nigga anyway. They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I don't want to do that. So this untouchable, think about this, untouchable, unkillable ideal, the highest ideal to us, the most powerful thing that we can ever see in physical reality. So as we stuck on this fucking joint, and we don't go in the world, physical thing is the fucking sun. Highest thing in our creation is the sun. So the most powerful ideal in each society and each mythology is always represented by the sun. Remember that. So when you talk about Balder, you're talking about that. You're talking about this untouchable, impenetrable, immortal ideal that we could think is not only the highest one, but we think in this time could never die. Think about back in the day how people thought of the president, how people thought of the government, people thought of kings. Like they thought there's just something you can't ever avoid, but you have to be under this thing's dominion, right? In the same way that Balder had dominion over all the living things, all the forces that would do him no harm, every plant, wood, every metal, every element, everything, right? What happens is Loki, the trickster god, the shape-shifting god, and Loki is also the fire, because he's represented by fire. Like one of his symbols, that's even where they think one of his name comes from, is, Loki, Luke, the light, the dancing light. And that's why he's content with shape-shifting. Fire is like shape-shifting. Like even the idea that I think his mother name means like, it's like his mother name means like striking or something. I don't know where I wrote that down. His mother name means like force. Yeah, his mother name means force, and his father name means like striking lightning. So it's the idea of what happens when striking lightning meets force, fire. And that's literally what Loki is. That's where the shape-shifting thing comes in, and that's the chaos, because fire can be something that's very beautiful and creative and helps sustain life, or it can destroy it and take over and just kill it and destroy everything. That's that trickster aspect. So when you talk about Loki, as a trickster, sees things from different perspectives. He sees things that people don't. He's in all worlds. He has no form. So in thinking from that perspective, being chaos incarnate, he's like, wait a minute, so you asked everything, like literally everything in creation, like everything? And Freya was like, yeah, I did, yeah, I asked her. Well, actually, I didn't ask the mistletoe. Like, the mistletoe is just so harmless, it's just such a common plant historically, I never thought to ask him. And the important thing is that really what it was is that she asked everything in heaven and earth. And you gotta think about what physically, symbolically, remember that. You gotta bring things into your real world. Why people really use the symbol of a fox for this deity, why they really use the symbol of a panther for this deity. The idea is physically what that's representing to them. And physically, mistletoe, it would live in the trees. And it would grow like midway on like the trees and stuff like that. And because it was a poisonous, not poisonous, like a carnivorous, whatever that shit called. It's a vine, it's a weed though. And when it would grow on these vines, when these vines would grow on these trees, in the wintertime they wouldn't die. So basically you can see, you can see the idea of they live between two worlds. They're neither in heaven or in earth. Because they're not in the ground, and they're not high up in the trees. They just kind of exist midway, the midpoints. Neither in heaven or earth. And it has a history of being so harmless that people just look over it. But the trickster doesn't look over anything, because it sees everything. Because it can see everything because it looks at things from all perspectives. And in saying that, he manipulates, which is interesting, he manipulates Balder's brother, the blind god of cold and darkness. And to me, that represents more that it represents the shadow, essentially, but specifically what's in the shadow, and that's the old gods. Because the whole point, and this is told in every mythology, when, essentially the succession myth, is the idea that Zeus and Odin are always killing out these old gods, these old family of darkness, these old primordial gods. Like Zeus kills his father, Kronos, and before him, Kronos kills Saturn. And Odin does the same thing. He kills the old giant, Ymir, and he makes the world out of that. And that's what we're talking about, where that's how that age started. That's just a story of how the age that we lived in that time, still kind of coming out, to be fair. The age we living in that time is the time of, this is the story of how it happened. The story is that these different gods and ordeals at some point were just babies too. And they killed the old ordeals to create this new world. They created a new world and took chaos and turned it into order. And as this world that they created dissolves, dissolves, it turns into this new world where the gods were right here, they come down, they get killed off, these old principles get killed off, and then a new world comes from them. But, and what that's saying really is that essentially that new world is that old world of chaos. It's the things that was hidden in the dark from that time period. Basically, all the things that were taboo in the old age are coming back. Like things that were taboo, like people used to be like, weed was really a crime. Like now, people selling gas stations. You got to think about these things. Like everything that was once taboo, like psychedelics, traditional religions. People like, you doing voodoo, and some people are still like that, to be fair, but they're stuck in the old age because the new age is that you can go into a store and like buy some shit from the Reaches, like maybe from like a goddamn Target or some shit pretty soon. Like that's crazy. Even the idea that this many people know what the Reaches are, it's crazy. When we moving from that, so specifically we're talking about is Holder is that blind god. He was what was left in the cold and the dark. He was left out of the sun. He was left out of this new world that the gods of that age created. And it's with his help that Loki forms a spear, and he tricks Hodor into using the spear, which is kind of like, I think, like Prometheus. Like, Prometheus literally means Prometheus, primer thought, thinking before, thinking prior. So it's thinking priorly, having foresight, being able to see into the future, past this moment. I think that's kind of what Loki is representing in this way, where he has to, where they usually like the tricks always tricks the people into doing something that eventually does have a good effect later on, but you don't see it now. So he tricks them, ends up killing Boulder. Everybody's mad as shit. They try to beat Loki ass. They try to kill him, but they can't kill him because he can't kill chaos. So they try to trap him, and they imprison him in the guts of some of his children, actually, which is really gruesome. But you gotta think about symbolically, where they're kind of saying is that in order to trap a god of chaos, in order to trap a trickster, in order to trap down this primordial energy, you have to use the forces of his creation, kind of against them. And that's a really deep symbolic. That's a really deep symbolic message. But you can't lock up chaos either. So Ragnarok is essentially Loki coming home. Like, it's told that when Loki is under, when he's trapped in the guts of his children, he's trapped under this venomous snake that is on the bottom of Yggdrasil. Like, he's trapped under Yggdrasil, the roots of Yggdrasil. He's trapped in the roots of the world tree. And one of the serpents from the world tree drips venom onto his eyes every day, onto his forehead, like on his pineal gland essentially. But that's a do it, I'm gonna touch that one for real. And his wife, sits there and catches the venom so it doesn't get him. But every once in a while she has to go dump it. And when she goes dump it into the well of herb or some shit, he comes, he has to get hit with it then. And when he gets hit with it, he has forms, he tremors, and in Norse mythology, that's where earthquakes come from. The tremors of Loki, like shaking the earth, literally shaking the foundations of the world tree. He's shaking the foundations of the culture of society at this time. And when you look at it like that, it's very interesting because eventually one time comes where he doesn't stop shaking. He doesn't stop shaking the world tree. And he keeps going until he gets released and he gets freed. And his sons, his children that weren't killed, they now are freed as well. And they kill the gods. And Surtur comes, who is the fire, primordial fire god. And the ice giants come with Loki. And these, which, you know, those are the two, like the song of Ice and Fire, that's what Game of Thrones gets it from. The Norse mythology aspect of that's the two forces of the universe in Norse mythology to create everything, hot and cold. And that's literally in everything, yin and yang. Like, that's just the same concept, as above, so below. So you look at it like that, it's these primordial forces, all of them primordial forces, really. Like, they're all different forms of chaos. Like, and they're just really spelling it out to you, the newer forms of them, the in-between points like Loki, and the oldest forms, which is Surtur and ice giants, who come from literally the primordial forces that created the universe, the first fire and the first ice. And that, kind of trying to wrap this up real quick, is after everybody's dead, after everybody's gone, essentially what happens is Loki's children and the children of the gods create a new world. Because it's just the idea that, like, people don't get this. Apocalypse isn't the end. It's just the end of one world. It's not the end of all, like, everything. Like, it's not how that works. You know, every end there's a new beginning. Like, that's like a cliche, but that's really just how cycles work. The idea that as this old age die, we're gonna move into a new age. But in order to move into a new age, the old age must die. The party must die. The gods must die. All old world deals, like, what was it, like Jill Scott Heron, Sign of the Times. Like, you know, there can be no salvation until, like, all things have been addressed. All old customs have been addressed, something like that. And we can wrap it up on that one. Like, oh, actually, before we go, we're gonna give some recommendations. So, remember I said we're talking about, like, living myths. I don't got my Joseph Campbell on me, but this is another good comparative mythology guy. He made another one called Parallel Myths. You can see on the back, and that's a real good one too. Now, like I said, Norse mythology comes from the Poetic Eddas. This is the raw form. Now, these aren't the complete Eddas. There's another one, and there's one after that. They're like later translated versions that are a little bit more Shakespearean, but more like novels. They're more novelistic. These are more like actual poems and shit. Like, yeah, this is actually a poem about Ragnarök. This is a good one to read real quick. Which shall bring the doom of death to Odin, when the gods to destruction go. We're talking about Ragnarök. The wolf shall fell the father of men, and this shall Vithar avenge. Now, this is literally saying that the wolf shall fail is Fenrir. Fenrir is the son of Loki. He's going to kill the father of men. He shall fail the father of men. The father of men is Odin. And this shall Vithar avenge. Vithar, who I didn't talk about, well, I mentioned earlier, the new gods, the son of the gods and the son of Loki. The son of the gods is Vithar, as one of the sons. And Vithar is the sound god. And it's another kind of like little mythology. But yeah, you can see how that's like very poetry. Most updated version, most cohesive version, a really nice one I like, is Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. This is essentially the book on Norse mythology. Like, Neil Gaiman is the guy who made Sandman and one other one I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But he's like a famous writer. And this is a very good one. since I got it right here, these are two good books to always get to. Let's get all three. You know, the Arts and Symbols of the Cult have a lot of good pictures and images in there that can help people with learning. Oh, there's actually a preview for the next video I'm gonna do on the Monkey King. Right there, you see the, since we're talking about today, that's the hoodie, the baboon. Also a good one is it's the Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manny P. Hall. And there's actually a good picture of Odin here that I want to get to right before we leave, wrap it up. Oh, that was perfect. And great book. If you can get your hand on this version, this is Tim's perfect version. But great book. That's Odin.